Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Your easy guide to English words you need to know. Let's go exploring far and near.
Welcome to this deep dive into a truly unique landscape. Today our mission is to explore the incredible Indiana Dunes National Park. It is a beautiful area located right along the southern shore of Lake Michigan in the United States. We are going to highlight the must-see spots, share the history of the land, and of course teach you some useful English travel phrases you can use on your trip.
I am really looking forward to this. I love exploring new places and diving into the science and the stories behind them. It's fascinating to look at how a landscape actually works.
It really is.
And to give you a clear picture of the area, well, the scale of this place is just amazing. The park covers 15 miles of coastline along Lake Michigan. It also includes over 15,000 acres of land.
That is a lot of space.
Yeah, and what's really special here is the variety. It isn't just one big, flat beach. The area is filled with very diverse habitats. So you'll find sandy beaches, obviously, but you'll also find deep green forests, wet marshes, and wide open prairies.
It sounds absolutely huge. And because it's so big, I want to share a very important practical tip for tourists right away. If you're planning a trip, you need to know that this area is actually made up of two completely different parks.
Wait, two different parks right next to each other?
Yes, exactly.
That sounds like it could easily confuse a first-time visitor.
It catches a lot of people by surprise, you know.
Yeah.
The area is made up of the Indiana Dunes National Park, which is managed by the federal government, and the Indiana Dunes State Park, which is managed by the state of Indiana. They share the same beautiful coastline, and they are located right next to each other.
So if I'm a traveler renting a car and driving up to the gate, what does this mean for me?
The most important thing to know is that they have completely separate entrance fees.
Ah, okay.
Right. If you buy a pass for the national park, it doesn't work for the state park. And if you buy a pass for the state park, it doesn't work for the national park. A lot of tourists drive up to the gate, show the pass they just bought down the road, and the ranger has to tell them they need to pay again.
That is a great logistical tip. I mean, nobody wants to deal with unexpected fees on their vacation.
Exactly. So let's practice some useful English to help you handle this situation smoothly when you go to the visitor center. If you want to know where to pay, you can walk up to the front desk and simply ask, "Where can I buy a park entry pass?"
Where can I buy a park entry pass? That's a very clear way to ask.
It gets straight to the point. Now, if you want to be completely sure your pass works for the specific area you want to visit, you can hold up your ticket and ask, "Does this pass work for the state park?"
Does this pass work for the state park? Asking those simple questions right at the beginning of your trip will definitely save you a lot of time and stress.
It really will. So now that we know how to get through the front gates without any trouble, let's talk about the landscape. You mentioned earlier that there are many different habitats, not just beaches.
Yes, and understanding the landscape makes the visit so much better. There are two very important words you will see on the maps and signs everywhere in this park. Those words are dune and swale.
Let's unpack those terms. Most people probably have a general idea, but what exactly is a dune in this context?
A dune is a massive hill of sand, but it isn't piled up by machines or people. A dune is shaped entirely by the wind. Over thousands of years, the strong wind blowing off Lake Michigan picks up the sand from the beach and pushes it inland. Over time, that sand builds up into these huge rolling hills.
That paints a great picture. So the wind is constantly moving and shaping the land. What about the second word? Swale.
While the dunes are the high, dry hills of sand, the swales are the low, wet areas between those sand ridges. You can think of a swale like a small valley sitting between two mountains.
And because it's a low area, I imagine that's where all the rain and water collects.
Precisely. A swale is usually a wet marsh or small pond. The contrast is really what makes this park famous. You can stand on top of a dry, hot sand dune where it feels like a desert. Then you walk just a few minutes down the hill and suddenly you are standing in a wet green swale filled with frogs, water birds, and entirely different plants.
That's fascinating. You get to experience two completely different environments on the exact same short walk. And speaking of walks, there are some incredible must-see attractions and hiking trails here. For visitors who like a physical challenge, there's a very popular activity located inside the state park. It's called the Three Dune Challenge.
The Three Dune Challenge. Climbing one sand dune is hard enough. 3 sounds like a serious workout.
It's definitely a workout. It's a 1.5-mile trail, which doesn't sound very long, but the terrain is tough. On this trail, visitors must climb the 3 tallest sand dunes in the entire park.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are named Mount Tom, Mount Holden, and Mount Jackson.
How much elevation are we talking about?
You're hiking up over 500 feet in total. And the tricky part is the surface. You're climbing in deep, loose sand. It's much harder than walking on a paved road or a dirt path. When you step up on a steep dune, the sand slides out from under your boots. For every 2 steps you take forward, you might slide 1 step backward.
That sounds exhausting. Your legs would definitely feel that the next day. But I'm sure reaching the top of all 3 feels very rewarding. What about the national park side? Are there famous dunes over there?
Yes, there's one dune in particular that everyone talks about. Have you looked into Mount Baldy?
Oh, and Baldy is incredible. It's arguably the most famous sand dune in the national park. It stands a massive 125 feet high, and it's a crescent-shaped sand dune, which means it looks like the curved shape of a thin moon in the night sky. The wind coming off the lake shapes it into that beautiful curve.
It sounds beautiful. Can visitors just walk right up to the top of Mount Baldy to look around?
Actually, you can't just walk anywhere you want on it. The sand and the grasses growing there are very fragile. The park has to protect the shape of the dune. However, visitors can take special hikes to the top, which are led by park rangers. When you hike up with a ranger and reach the peak, the views looking out over Lake Michigan are just spectacular.
Speaking of views, there's a surprising secret about this park that a lot of tourists don't expect. It's one of my favorite details from our sources.
I love a good hidden secret. What is it?
If you go to a place called Porter Beach right at sunset, you can look out across the water of Lake Michigan. On a clear day, you can actually see the skyline of downtown Chicago sitting across the water. You can clearly see the famous Sears Tower and the Hancock Building.
You can see the Chicago city skyline all the way from the nature park in Indiana.
Yes, it's a really stunning visual. You are standing on a quiet, sandy beach listening to the water and the birds. But when you look at the horizon, you see this huge, busy industrial city in the distance. It's a beautiful, sharp contrast between quiet nature and human industry.
That contrast really highlights how special this park is. It's like a peaceful oasis sitting right next to a busy industrial world. In fact, seeing those city buildings across the water perfectly connects to the history of this land. The only reason this quiet nature still exists today, so close to major cities and factories, is because of some very important scientific research.
That's a perfect transition. Let's talk about the history of the land and the science that saved it.
To really appreciate the Indiana dunes, you have to know about a man named Henry Chandler Cowles. In the late 1890s, he spent a lot of time studying a specific area in the park that is now named after him, Cowles Bog.
He studied the bog. What was he looking for in the sand and the water?
He was actually pioneering a brand new field of science. Cowles was studying ecology. For our listeners, ecology is the study of how plants, animals, and the physical land all live together and affect each other. It's the science of nature's relationships.
So he wasn't just looking at one plant. He was looking at how the plant, the sand, and the weather all interacted.
Exactly. And what he discovered in the Indiana dunes changed science forever. He studied how plants actually stop the massive sand dunes from moving.
Plants can stop a moving mountain of sand? That sounds impossible. The wind is so strong.
It's amazing, but it's true. When tough beach grasses and plant seeds manage to grow in the loose sand, their roots reach deep down into the ground. These roots spread out and act like a giant net, holding the shifting sand in place. Once the grass stabilizes the sand, bigger plants can grow. Eventually, over many years, that moving sand dune turns into a stable, permanent forest.
That is an incredible natural process. But how did his study of plant roots help save the actual park from being destroyed?
Cowles published his work, and it proved just how unique and complex this landscape was. European scientists even called the dunes one of the natural wonders of the world. At the time, huge companies wanted to buy the dunes, flatten the sand, and build factories and steel mills right on the water.
Oh, wow, that would have ruined everything.
It would have. But local people used Cowles' scientific research to argue that the land was too special to destroy. His science gave them the proof they needed to fight for the dunes and turn the area into a protected park.
He literally saved the dunes with his research. That makes walking through the forests there feel so much more meaningful. But nature isn't the only historic thing preserved in this park. There's also some fascinating historic architecture sitting right on the beach.
Historic architecture. Inside a nature park, that's not something you usually see.
It's very unique. There's a group of famous houses called the 1933 Century of Progress homes. They have a really wild history.
Tell me about them. What does Century of Progress mean?
In 1933, the city of Chicago hosted a huge World's Fair. It was a massive exhibition designed to show off brand new technology and bold ideas for the future. As part of the fair, they built these special exhibition houses to show the public what homes might look like in the future. They featured new materials and modern designs.
So they built these futuristic homes in Chicago for the fair. How did they end up in a nature park in Indiana?
That's the best part. After the World Fair was over, a private buyer purchased the houses. But instead of tearing them down, they put the entire houses onto barges, large flat boats, and floated them across Lake Michigan to the Indiana dunes.
They floated whole houses across the lake. The logistics of doing that in the 1930s must have been incredibly difficult.
It was a massive project. And today, those houses are still sitting on the dunes. Here's a really practical travel tip for our listeners. One of these historic homes is called the Cypress Log Cabin. It was designed to look like a traditional rustic mountain cabin, but it was built with modern 1930s technology.
It sounds beautiful. Do visitors just look at it from the outside, or is it a museum you can walk through?
You can actually do much more than look at it. You can rent it. Tourists can book the Cypress Log Cabin and sleep overnight in a historic home from the World's Fair, right on the edge of Lake Michigan.
Sleeping in a piece of architectural history inside a national park, that is a fantastic lodging option. I imagine it books up very quickly.
It definitely does. But whether you are staying overnight in a historic cabin or just visiting for a few hours to hike the dunes, you need to know how to prepare for the environment. That brings us to our practical tips: accessibility and safety rules.
This is so important. The weather and the environment around the Great Lakes can change very quickly. Knowing what to pack can make a huge difference in how much you enjoy your trip.
Absolutely. I want to share a quick seasonal packing guide based on our sources. If you visit in the spring, the snow is melting, and the low swales we talked about get very full of water. The trails become incredibly muddy. You must bring waterproof shoes or hiking boots.
Waterproof shoes for the spring mud, that makes sense. What about the summer?
In the summer, it gets very hot and humid. You need plenty of water, but the most important item you need to pack is bug spray.
Bug spray. I'm guessing the mosquitoes in those wet marshes are pretty bad.
The mosquitoes are definitely there, but the bug spray is actually for something more serious: ticks. Yeah. Ticks are tiny bugs that live in the tall grasses along the trails. If they bite you, they can make you quite sick. Using a good bug spray and checking your clothes after a hike will help you avoid tick bites.
That's a great safety tip. You always want to respect the local wildlife, even the tiny bugs. How about the colder months, fall and winter?
In the fall, the weather is beautiful but unpredictable, so bring a jacket for the cool mornings. In the winter, the wind coming off Lake Michigan is freezing cold. It cuts right through normal clothing. You must wear thick, heavy layers. Also, there's one permanent safety rule for the beach, no matter what season it is. Never bring glass containers.
No glass bottles on the beach. That's a smart rule. If a glass bottle breaks in the loose sand, it's impossible to clean up all the pieces, and the next person walking barefoot could get a terrible cut.
Exactly. Just pack your water or drinks in a reusable plastic or metal bottle. It's much safer for everyone. Now, speaking of safety, you notice a very specific winter danger in the research that visitors need to be aware of.
Yes, this is a crucial warning for anyone visiting during the colder months. If you go to the beach in the deep winter, you will see a natural phenomenon called shelf ice.
Shelf ice. The word shelf makes me think of a flat piece of wood on a wall where you put books. What does it mean when ice forms a shelf?
It's a great description of how it looks. During the freezing winter months, the water at the edge of the lake freezes. As the waves crash against the shore, they push more and more floating ice up against the beach. The cold air freezes all those pieces together into a massive, solid, flat shelf of ice that reaches out over the open water.
It sounds visually stunning. I imagine it looks like a frozen white desert extending out into the lake.
It is incredibly beautiful. The ice can pile up high and create little frozen mountains. It looks completely solid, like normal ground. But here's the most important warning. Tourists must never walk on the shelf ice.
Never walk on it, even if it looks thick enough to hold a person's weight.
Never. It is extremely dangerous. The shelf ice is full of hidden holes, cracks, and thin spots covered by snow. If you walk out onto the ice, it can suddenly break under your feet. You will fall straight through the ice into the freezing, deep water below. Because the heavy shelf of ice is above your head, it is almost impossible to climb back out.
That is terrifying. It's a perfect example of why we need to respect nature. The rule is very simple. Enjoy the beautiful view of the shelf ice from the safety of the sandy beach. Do not take a single step onto the ice itself.
Stay on the sand, take your photos, and stay safe.
That's a tip that could genuinely save a life. Now, we've talked a lot about physical challenges today. We've discussed hiking up steep 500-foot dunes and navigating muddy trails. But I really want to highlight how welcoming this park is for all visitors, including those who might not be able to hike steep hills. The park has excellent options for visitors with mobility challenges.
That's so important. Sand is famously difficult to move through. Traditional wheelchairs sink right into it. How does the park make the dunes accessible?
They use some amazing equipment, and it's completely free for visitors to use. First, if you visit the Paul H. Douglas Center, they offer a device called the Freedom Tracks.
Freedom Tracks. How does that piece of equipment work?
It's essentially a motorized track system, almost like the tracks on a small bulldozer. A visitor can attach a manual wheelchair directly onto the top of the Freedom Track system. Then, the user controls the battery-powered motor with a joystick. The heavy tracks distribute the weight so well that the wheelchair can drive right over the deep sand and rough dirt trails with ease.
That's brilliant engineering. It empowers the visitor to explore the trails independently without needing someone to push them through heavy sand.
It really gives people their independence back. You just have to call ahead to reserve it. Additionally, if you want to visit West Beach during the summer, the park offers special beach wheelchairs. These chairs are built with very large, wide, balloon-like wheels that float over the sand instead of sinking into it. You simply ask the park staff at the gate, and you can borrow one to get right down to the water.
I love seeing that. Everyone deserves the chance to experience the beauty of these parks, regardless of their physical mobility. It's a wonderful service.
I couldn't agree more. Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the high sandy peaks to the deep history. Let's do a quick recap.
We certainly covered a lot.
You are now fully armed with the knowledge to explore the Indiana Dunes safely and confidently. You know the useful English vocabulary to ask about entry passes so you don't get confused between the national and state parks. You understand the logistics of the exhausting three-dune challenge and the history of the 1933 World's Fair homes that floated across the lake. And most importantly, you know how to pack for the seasons, avoid ticks, and stay far away from the dangerous winter shelf ice.
Having that context makes a trip so much richer. But before we finish today, I want to leave you with one final, slightly mysterious thought straight from our research. We talked earlier about Mount Baldy, the massive 125-foot crescent-shaped sand dune in the national park.
Yes, the huge dune where you have to take a ranger-led hike to the top.
Right. While Mount Baldy isn't just famous for its impressive height or its great views of the lake, recently scientists and park rangers discovered something very strange happening there. Mount Baldy is famous for developing strange, unexplained holes that just randomly open up deep in the sand.
Wait, holes just opening up in the middle of a sand dune, like a sinkhole.
Exactly. These are perfectly round, deep holes that go straight down into the dry sand. Usually, if you dig a hole in dry sand, the sides just collapse immediately. But these holes stay open, and they are deep. It is a natural mystery that geologists and park scientists are still studying right now. It really makes you wonder, what could possibly cause a massive shifting hill of dry sand to suddenly form strange, deep holes that swallow the ground?
Wow. That is both spooky and completely fascinating. I love a good natural mystery. I highly encourage you, the listener, to go online and research the Mount Baldy holes on your own. See what the scientists are saying about it today. There is always something new to discover when you look closely at nature.
There really is. The natural world is full of surprises if you know where to look.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Indiana Dunes. Keep learning, keep exploring, and stay curious.
Until next time, safe travels out there.